My apologies, there's that phone thing again. I think I got some more stuff cleared up. Maybe we can make it through this. Our fences consisted of an embarrassing medley of rusting page wire interspersed with sections of rotting cedar rails and runs of barbed wire stapled to trees and wired T-bars pounded in willy-nilly. Dad's idea of keeping me supplied in the endless battle with this tired mess was to return from an auction sale with a pail of bent rusty nails and a couple of rolls of used barbed wire. A small percentage of the nails would prove serviceable at the expense of my thumbs. The tangled rusty rolls of barbed wire would leave my hands lacerated and more often than not defied my efforts to make them of any use. Pails of useless nails and partial rolls of hopelessly tangled wire accumulated in the corners of the driving shed. I'd weave bits of cedar saplings I cut with an axe amongst the wire sections and sitting on the hood of the tractor do my best to pound in stakes. Oh yeah, which he bought bent at auctions and I had to try to straighten with the tractor. The cedar rail sections I'd lash sticks to the broken rails with used baling twine. If it weren't for regular tetanus shots and copious consumption of iodine, I'm sure the barbed wire sections would have been the death of me. Early one afternoon, I noticed the cows milling about the corner of the field where the highway that bordered the front of the farm crossed to the railway tracks. The field broke into a bit of a hill and the grass was sparse there. Wondering what could have been of interest to the fool beasts, I headed over to investigate. The steers were milling and mooing about in agitation, and as they were taller than I was at the time, I climbed the fence to look them over. The confusion, it took me a bit to catch on. The old lead cow was stuck halfway over the page wire. I was a bit of a loss as to what to do as I watched her. Spurred on by her followers' excitement, she went at extracting herself with renewed vigor. How she thrashed her way over that fence without doing herself a grievous injury, I don't know, but she managed it. Moving in encouragement to her loyal followers, who then proceeded to hammer away enthusiastic at the fence, she merrily headed west on the rail line at a rapid trot. I succeeded in driving the steers off the fence line and continuing to hurl cursive stones and sticks down off from the railway track, drove them across the field. The fence having held up quite well, how did she get over that? I still don't know. I thought I'd best go off in pursuit of the fool old cow. The first mile out the highway paralleling the railway line was a steady incline, and the old cow continued contentedly at a rapid trot. I pedaled my 20-inch single-speed Mustang bike for all it was worth. Around the half-mile mark, I thought I was far enough ahead to climb the bank up to the tracks, but I'd misjudged. Panting and sweating, I was halfway up the bank when she put on a burst of speed, shot me a smug look, and whisked on by. Another quarter mile of fevered pedaling succeeded only in repeating this performance. Desperate and angered, I raced her for another half mile, and when the highway began to level off, I gained at what I thought was an adequate lead. Thoroughly lathered and half delirious as I scrambled up the bank, I thought victory was mine. I'd beat her by no more than a few scant seconds, but that was all I needed to get in front of her. Too astonished to leap aside when she failed to stop or even slow down in the least, I found myself tumbling amongst her legs as she bowled me over. Ejected out the back, I latched onto her tail. As my bare legs skidded along the gravel and her rear hooves pounded away on me thick noggin, it occurred to me this was an endeavor in futility. Letting go of her tail, I came to a stop and lay there thoroughly beaten. Battered, bruised, and cut and scraped, I sprawled on the rail bed and cursed her and her kind as she receded in the distance. Feeling pretty sorry for myself, I was sitting on the rail, knuckling tears of bitter frustration when it occurred to me to wonder what the steers were doing. The vision of them boiling over that fence like so many ants. Off I raced again. Fortuitously it was downhill this time. I arrived to find the steers back at the fence corner. One of the bolder fellas had his front legs over the now beleaguered wire, and panicky and enraged, I flung my pedal bike right in his face. I found the result quite to my satisfaction as he reeled back, bawling. I flailed a couple of more cows that had their heads over the fence upside their faces, and flung the bike and myself over the fence. No YouTube footage in those days, but the caption would have been to the effect of, "Watches a bloody, battered, enraged 8-year-old boy, cursing to shame a sailor, drives a herd of cows with flailing pedal bike." The herd retreated to the far corner of the field, and I turned to inspect the havoc they'd wrought on the fence. The fence was a mess beyond my ability to fathom a quick solution. My poor bike was in tatters, so I hung it on the fence for lack of a better idea. Knowing the cows would return immediately upon my departure, I was at a loss as to what to do. Could I herd them into the hayfield and close the gate? No, not by myself. Could I use the tractor to herd them? No, that'd be no good. They'd just scatter like so many chickens. But the tractor gave me an idea, so I raced off. By the time I'd hitched the tractor to the hay wagon, the steers had returned to the scene. I gave no consideration to either the tractor or the wagon as we bounced across the field in high gear, again scattering the herd. Getting the wagon and tractor positioned appropriately on the slope took some doing, but I was feeling pretty smug when I managed the feat, only to discover the tractor's feeble brake wouldn't hold it on the hill. I jockeyed the rig about for a while before I could get one of the tractor's wheels wedged up against the fence post. The cows watched me the whole while. I, in turn, cursed the cows the whole while. I trudged up to the house satisfied the tractor and wagon would thwart the fool beast's effort to get to the now mangled fence section. Desperately parched, I gulped water at the garden hose. The ice-cold water refreshed me, and I peeled off my tattered t-shirt and my socks and shoes. I hosed myself from head to foot until the water ran clear and I was a shivering mass of goosebumps. Thinking maybe I should disinfect the myriad of cuts and scrapes I was sporting, but wanting to expedite the task, I headed not for the house but to the barn instead. Grabbing up the Dettol we used for the horses, I liberally doused my limbs and upside my head where the old cow's hooves had been hammering away at me as I foolishly clung onto her tail. I was about 3 strides out of the barn when I thought, wow, no wonder the horses flinch when you dab this stuff on them. Another stride and the Dettol was burning through my cold, numbed flesh in a most alarming fashion. I didn't even see Mother and Granny pull in the yard as I gyrated, flapping and wailing and whooping about in a fiery misery. I wasn't even aware of the women folks' presence until they latched on a hold of me and quickly ascertained I was in no immediate physical danger, though I'm sure for a moment or two they may have questioned my mental status. Waving, flapping, and hopping about, I managed to convey the gist of the situation. I could see they were failing in their efforts to contain their mirth, but I was too busy flailing about to be concerned with being the butt of the joke. After calming me somewhat, Mother said, "I'll get on the phone and see if I can track down your father. Why don't you go with your car and with your granny and see if you can track down that fool old cow?" I flapped, slapped, and shimmied over to the car with Granny in tow. Settling into the car, Granny, chuckling, said, "Dettol, eh? That must sting something fearsome." Comment seemed redundant as I continued to flap and slap and twitch. "When your mother pulled into the yard, I thought you were doing some kind of an Indian rain dance. You were whooping something fierce." A witty rejoinder eluded me as I continued to slap and flap. I derived a measure of satisfaction as we crossed the tracks in pursuit of the old cow. The steers were staring dumbfounded at the hay wagon. Fool cows. Granny was losing patience with me as we cruised the back roads. "Get in the front here and sit still. You're bounding about the back seat like some fool puppy dog. What ails you, boy? Sit still, I'm telling you." Oh, Granny, if we don't find that cow, I'm going to catch hell in some fashion or another, I wailed. You're going to catch what, Granny Snap? Oh, you know what I mean. If I say anything wrong around here, if anything goes wrong, it always seems to be my fault somehow, I whined. Well, as often as not, it seems it is one of your own ill-conceived schemes that lands you in hot water, then softening somewhat as I continued to twitch and flap. However, in this case, I can't see any fault on your part. Oh, Dad'll find something, you wait and see. Well, she responded, we're about to find out. It's time we give up, headed back for supper. I don't know how many times she admonished me to sit still on the return trip. And I think I'll just leave that here as I check the phone and see if I can keep going or not. Sorry about the interruptus. I'll try and get this straightened out.